I devoted 30 solid years to that company, pouring my heart and tireless effort into every single project. No one managed more projects than I did. Yet, promotions? I was never on the list. If anything went wrong, I was always to blame. All key positions in our department were filled by the boss's relatives. They treated the company like their personal playground, and anyone who stood in the way of their cash flow was fired. Naturally, I was the first to go. I went straight to my boss to demand an explanation. He had the gall to look me in the eye and say, "Gloria, you're getting older, you don't have the stamina you used to." Then he dared to suggest I take early retirement, as if it were my idea. When my son, Brian, heard about it, he practically jumped out of his chair with excitement. "Mom, come work with me," he grinned, as if he'd won the lottery. So, I did. I left that company and joined Brian's team. It was only then that my former boss realized the person he'd discarded was the very backbone holding the company together. I leveraged the network I'd built over the years to secure a massive project for Brian's company. We were deep into it, moving full steam ahead. My old boss, Bruce, heard about it and couldn't suppress a contemptuous smile. To him, I was just a failure clinging to past glories. He attributed the deal to pure luck, nothing more. Meanwhile, his relatives in the company made my life miserable, criticizing everything I did. Brian couldn't stand it. More than once, he tried to persuade me to leave. "Mom, this place doesn't deserve you. You've given enough." But I did the math. Between retirement, severance, and health insurance, $180,000 awaited me. I gritted my teeth and told myself I'd hold out for another 6 months. But it didn't even come to that. Bruce's secretary, honestly more his mistress, who was actually the daughter of a distant cousin, was about 27 or 28 years old. To secure her position, she checked my salary. Then, with a sweet smile, and politely suggested to Bruce that it was a financial mistake to keep me. From then on, Bruce became ruthless. Overtime became the new normal. Weekends were a thing of the past, my paychecks suddenly always in processing. I knew exactly what he was doing. He was trying to push me out without directly firing me, but I had my eye on the money. If they owed me something, I would collect. So, I kept my head down and endured it. This man, with whom I had worked side by side for 30 years, whom I once considered a friend, was now a stranger. Since he'd gotten involved with that secretary, it was as if he'd been replaced. She'd whisper something in his ear every few days, and Bruce started reprimanding me in meetings in front of everyone. He exaggerated minor mistakes wildly. His relatives, always envious of my salary, saw which way the wind was blowing and pounced. They made my life hell. Delays, mutual accusations, sabotage of my work. A simple project completely spiraled out of control. In the end, it failed. The company suffered losses of almost $6,000. Bruce exploded. He dragged me into his office and attacked me. "Gloria, what the hell is wrong with you?" he screamed. "Are you so old you can't even handle a simple project anymore?" I kept my voice calm and tried to explain, "Bruce, it's not my fault. The team refuses to follow me." I couldn't even finish the sentence. Suddenly, he grabbed a folder from his desk and threw it at my face. I hadn't expected him to attack me, so I didn't move. The sharp edge of the folder hit me directly on the forehead, tearing the skin. Blood trickled down. But it wasn't the pain that stunned me, it was the shock. Bruce had laid hands on me. 30 years, side by side. And that's how it ended. His expression changed for a moment. Perhaps guilt, perhaps not. But any expression immediately vanished again. He looked at me coldly. "Go to the clinic and get it treated. Tomorrow at 8 a.m., I want a recovery plan on my desk. If not, you know what that means." And that was it. That's how he let me go. I fought off the dizziness, went to the nearest emergency room, had the wound cleaned and bandaged. Then I staggered home after dark, upright but unsteady. This year I'll be 59, only 7 years until retirement. 30 years had passed since I started at Bruce's company at 29. This company was more than just my job, it was the largest part of my life. Back then, Bruce handled sales, I handled operations. We started in a small, cramped office and built an entire department. Line by line, side by side. But everything changed 2 years ago, right after he got involved with that secretary. I remember her, and, the niece of a distant cousin of Bruce, always dressed as if she were nominated for an award. Her eyes scrutinized you from top to bottom, as if you were on display. There was about a 30-year age difference between her and Bruce. But that gap didn't keep him at bay. She drove him crazy. This girl wasn't just a pretty face, she had a plan. She won Bruce's heart in no time and filled the company with her entire family. The result, pure chaos. The company was a disaster. Leadership crumbled. Efficiency plummeted. The old team, the people who had built this place with me, quit one after another. They couldn't stand the dysfunction anymore. But the situation is brutal. If you pass a certain age, quitting basically means you'll never find a job again. Seeing my old colleagues leave broke my heart. I wanted to stop them, but there was nothing I could do. Fortunately, my son Brian had founded his own engineering firm in recent years through determination, not connections. I sent my old team to him, helped them get back on their feet, and now, with everyone gone, I was the last one left on this sinking ship. I began to wonder if it wasn't time for me to go too. That night, I stood on the porch, my hand on the doorknob, but I couldn't open the door. Instead, I called Bruce. He answered quickly. In the background, electronic music boomed, mixed with male shouts and shrill laughter. Undoubtedly, he was in a club or a bar. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Bruce, can you go somewhere quieter? We need to talk." There was a pause, then he lowered his voice. "I'm in the restroom. What's up? Do you want money for your medical bill? Fine, I'll deduct it from your salary." I laughed bitterly and took a deep breath. "Bruce, we've worked together for 3 decades. Are you telling me none of that meant anything to you? Have you forgotten who mortgaged their house when the company was in the financial crisis? Who supported you when even your own family told you to give up?" His voice turned icy.
"Gloria, I remember, and I paid you back every cent."
"I didn't owe you a penny. If you're trying to guilt-trip me with old stories, forget it. This is business. We're not based on feelings, but on results. You ruined a simple project. You should have left a long time ago." My chest tightened. I fought to control myself. "Aren't you ashamed? Your secretary's relatives don't lift a finger and still collect paychecks. I carried all the projects for 2 years, worked through Thanksgiving." He didn't even flinch. His voice grew even colder. "Doesn't matter. That failed project cost us over $75,000. That's coming out of your salary. If that's not enough, you'll pay the rest out of your own pocket. That's your problem." Then I heard her, a sugary, flirtatious voice in the background. "Honey, why are you still talking to that old hag? Come back, I'm waiting." Click. The line went dead. I stood there on the porch, staring into the darkness. I truly hadn't expected Bruce to be so heartless. When I stepped through the door, Brian glanced at the bandage on my forehead, and his face immediately darkened. Anger flashed in his eyes. "Mom, what happened?" I sighed and briefly told him what had occurred. No sooner had I finished than he rolled up his sleeves and stormed toward the door. I rushed after him to stop him. "Where are you going?" "I'm going to beat that jerk," he yelled furiously. "He attacked you." I grabbed him, holding on tight. "Calm down, I'm too old for this drama." Then I said, "I've made a decision. I'm quitting tomorrow." He blinked, stunned for a moment. Then relief flooded his face, and a smile appeared at the corners of his mouth. "Finally, Mom, you've come to your senses." I gave him a weak smile. The truth was, it wasn't a matter of coming to my senses. I simply had no other choice. That night, I sat down and prepared a detailed analysis of the failed project. Every responsibility, every decision was clearly documented. I sent the entire report by email directly to Bruce. If I was leaving, I was drawing a clear line while I still could. From now on, everyone would have to deal with their own chaos. And as for that alleged 6-figure loss,
"Sorry, Bruce.
Go to your glittering team of starlets. I wouldn't let it go. I filed for labor dispute arbitration. After all, Bruce owed me outstanding salaries from the past 2 years, a significant 6-figure sum. There was no way I was letting that slide. When I told Brian, he immediately offered to connect me with a top-notch labor lawyer. He even invited me to officially join his company. Mom, if you want, I'll set up an office for you tomorrow. I nodded and smiled. I'd like that. Brian's company was a completely different world. Many of the old colleagues Bruce had fired were already working there. Seeing familiar faces again was unexpectedly moving. That night, Brian invited me to dinner. Between bites and sips of wine, he laughed and said, Bruce deserved it. All the important people he fired are with me now. And Mom, you probably didn't notice, but last month I landed a huge contract in the city. He looked so proud, just like when he came home with a school award as a child, beaming and waiting for my approval. As for Bruce and me, we had long passed the point of no return. He tried to blame me for the project loss and demanded I pay for the damages, while behind the scenes he was already planning to use the same money to lavish gifts on his beloved secretary. What he hadn't anticipated was that I was prepared. Long before I quit, I had already created a detailed accountability report for the entire project. Every cost overrun, every delay, every execution failure was clearly documented and attributed to the responsible individuals. I sent this report not only to Bruce but to the entire board of directors and key stakeholders. It made it clear that the loss was caused by his nepotism-hired, unqualified team, not by me. This document caused an uproar throughout the company. Coupled with the arbitration request from my lawyer, it finally left Bruce speechless. He had no choice but to pay me every cent of the owed salary. But I wasn't finished yet. I also filed a claim for medical damages. The sum wasn't high, but I didn't care. I just wanted to make him squirm. It was said he banged his fist on the table and smashed his phone when he received the notification. He even started making threats, boasting that he would steal one of our next contracts and crush Brian's company. The moment I heard that, my face went cold. I had worked for his company for 30 years. I knew exactly what kind of man lurked behind that polished facade. Turning against me was one thing, but going after my son, that crossed the line. I immediately sat down with Brian and proposed the Metropolitan Transit Line project to him. I told him I wanted full control over the bidding process. I would face Bruce myself. I wanted to look him in the eye and see exactly how he planned to defeat us. The Metropolitan Transit Line project was a significant urban transportation initiative, led by the city government with a projected budget for the final phase of $15 million. As I entered the bidding chamber, the first thing I saw was Bruce and his secretary and, sitting on the other side of the room. The tension in the air was palpable. Meeting an opponent face-to-face is always like that. Bruce saw me and put on a forced friendly smile. He raised his voice just enough to be heard. Well, the old guard of our company. Gloria, how long has it been? Now you want to make a career as a consultant. And giggled briefly and chimed in with a mocking smile.
Mr. Miller, WHY was the your words?
Nowadays, no one owes respect to someone who's been let go. I removed a piece of lint from my blazer sleeve and replied calmly and firmly, Bruce, I have to give it to you.
You're living your best life.
At 60-something, you're still keeping up with a secretary in her 20s. I hear your wife hasn't noticed yet. That must be quite a balancing act. His smile froze. Are you threatening me? He mumbled softly, his eyes glowing with rage.
Ilauket DRYLY. Please don't flatter yourself.
If I had time, I wouldn't waste it on you. And leaned forward, put on a sweet smile, and whispered in his ear. Honey, don't get upset. She's just a failure. We're here to win this contract, not to argue with anyone. She fluttered her eyelashes and patted his arm as if soothing a spoiled child. And as if on cue, Bruce's mood calmed somewhat. He cleared his throat lightly.
You're right.
It's not worth it. Let's focus. The room was full of company representatives, but only 2 firms were genuine competitors. Miller Construction, Bruce's company, and Brian and Company, my son's company. The others were just there to watch and perhaps learn something. As soon as the bidding began, the City Transit Authority threw a surprise. To increase efficiency, it announced it would split the contract into two parts, Phase A for the initial construction and Phase B for completion. Each phase would be awarded to a different firm. Phase A went to us. Phase B went to Bruce. His face immediately darkened. He had bet on the entire project. Getting only half was a hard blow. Then the main administrator delivered the final jab. "We heard about your recent project failure, Mr. Miller. This is a crucial project. We cannot afford another risk. If you want to stay in the game, show us you're serious. Otherwise, we're happy to give younger teams a chance." The room fell silent. I kept my head down, flipping through my notes, but I noticed my lips twitching with amusement. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Bruce's jaw clench so tightly I thought he'd break a tooth. Some debts don't need to be collected. Life has a way of settling the score. But the best part came a month later. I had just arrived at the office when Brian burst in, practically trembling with suppressed laughter. "Mom, I've got something hilarious. Guess what Bruce did?" I raised an eyebrow without taking the bait. "What?" "He tried to steal our plans." Brian pulled me to a chair and lowered his voice, barely able to contain himself. "He called one of our ex-employees, you know? The one he fired. He was asking technical questions, like he was desperate, and guess what the guy said?" "What?" "You don't have any real engineers left, and you're calling someone you fired for help." Bruce panicked, started begging, said if the guy helped him, he'd pay him a $90,000 consulting fee. The guy immediately took the money, cashed it, and then blocked him everywhere. I laughed loudly, gently stirring my coffee. He deserves it. That whole old crew. Bruce worked them like dogs for years and then tossed them out like trash. Brian grinned, but a hint of worry crossed his face. Still, $90,000 is no joke. What if Bruce accuses our guy of extortion? If he messes up the project, we could take the hit. I waved him off, as unconcerned as ever. "Don't worry. I know those people. None of them are easily manipulated, and none of them do stupid things." In fact, Bruce threw a tantrum behind closed doors. But in the end, he swallowed his pride. It turned out he still owed that ex-employee a portion of his severance. If it had gone to court, he would have had to pay not only legal fees but potentially even more. A thought occurred to me, perhaps, just perhaps, this was my window. So, I invited a few old colleagues for coffee and compiled a complete list of all employees Bruce had defrauded on salaries, benefits, everything. I covered the initial legal costs, and everyone else contributed to cover the rest. Together, we filed the lawsuit. As soon as I mentioned it, people joined with raised hands. Everyone knew what kind of man Bruce was. Years ago, some had hesitated out of loyalty or fear. Now, he was a pariah, a walking scandal that people wanted to dismantle. While our firm was working hard on the new project, Bruce's world was rapidly collapsing. He avoided court dates, struggled to find external help to fill the huge gaps left by his so-called team. The relatives he had hired through family ties were good at drinking lattes and posing for selfies on the office floor, but asking them to write a proposal or conduct a technical review was like asking a child to pole dance. But even all that wasn't enough for me. Then I understood. I had to think of Bruce's wife, Marie. I couldn't stop thinking about how she almost lost her composure when I hinted at the bidding that he was dating a secretary in her 20s. That expression on her face stayed with me, and that gave me an idea. I contacted Marie Miller, Bruce's only legal wife. Frankly, I wasn't entirely prepared to see her again. After all these years, she hadn't changed a bit. She must have been around 60, dressed in a tailored black dress and an immaculate white blouse. Her short, silver-gray hair exuded elegance. The moment she entered the cafe, the entire room seemed to quiet. She sat opposite me. Her voice was firm. "Gloria, what made you contact me? How long has it been since we last spoke?" I nodded. "Yes, not since you left the company." Her expression tightened slightly. "And why now? What do you want from me?" I smiled calmly and slid my phone across the table to her. "Marie, I'm not here to make trouble. I just wanted to show you something. Everything I need to say is here. She hesitated a moment, then tapped the screen. Images appeared, screenshots of messages, photos of Bruce and Anne meeting secretly, credit card statements, receipts. I waited, expecting at least a hint of indignation. But Marie didn't even flinch. Her eyes scanned the screen with cold indifference. Perhaps a hint of surprise, maybe a touch of disdain, but not the emotion, the humiliation, or the anger I had expected. She locked the phone, pushed it back and said gruffly, "Did you come all this way just to show me that?" Her reaction threw me off guard. I hesitated. Well, not just that, but... She cut me off with a cold, cutting tone. Whatever Bruce is doing out there is his business. It has nothing to do with me. It wasn't indifference. It was something colder, a woman who had already experienced the worst and came out frozen. When I married him, Gloria, I knew this day would come. None of this surprises me. In that moment, I understood why she hadn't even blinked at the evidence. There were things she didn't say, but I heard them loud and clear. When the company was still in its infancy, the three of us, she, Bruce, and I, built it together. We were known as the Iron Triangle. We had navigated the toughest clients and the ugliest deals together. Marie had a promising career until, in her late 30s, she suddenly stepped down and married Bruce, who was CEO at the time. I had never quite understood her decision. She could have married someone who saw her as an equal, who helped her, instead of pigeonholing her. Instead, she married the man who later made her a housewife and then cheated on her. But perhaps in her eyes, I was the one who didn't understand reality. Marie took a sip of coffee and spoke as calmly as ever. My first marriage was for love. It didn't end well. When things got better financially, the love disappeared. And so did he. He cheated on me. This time, I decided not to be so foolish. Bruce has money. I married him for stability. As long as the deposits arrive in my account every month, Gloria, I don't care if he has 1 mistress or 8. I nodded slowly, strangely impressed by her clarity. You're honest and pragmatic. But her next statement made the air stand still. Only fools allow themselves to be used as weapons, right? My heart skipped a beat. Before I could answer, she put down her cup and continued. I've heard the stories about the failed project, about you stealing his staff for your son's company, and now you're here. What do you expect me to do? Flip the table, storm his office, and burn everything down while he's inside? She smiled slightly, shaking her head. Gloria, I'm not the type to get carried away by emotions. Bruce is my husband. I may not love him anymore, but we are connected. Do you think I would help you ruin him? I opened my mouth, not knowing what to say, but she was already standing, pulling a silk scarf from her bag and wiping her hands. It seems you've come to the wrong woman, Gloria. Then, without another word, she picked up her glass, tilted it slowly forward, and poured half a cup of ice water over the table in front of me. It splattered, soaking the sleeve of my blouse. I sat there, still, and watched her leave. I realized that sometimes it's not about right or wrong. It's about direction. Marie and I never went down the same path. She chose security over passion, betting on a life that wouldn't change too much. Perhaps I had to respect that, even if I would never make that choice myself. Although Marie declined my offer to work together, I wasn't ready to give up. That little voice inside me knocked on my door again. Why not start something of your own? So, I did. Right after meeting Marie, I plunged headfirst into the project. If I wanted to compete directly with Bruce, the most direct way was to complete our portion of the city contract smoothly and ahead of schedule. I wanted to show the entire industry who the real professionals were. By this point, Bruce's company was practically an empty shell. The last failed project had already damaged his reputation. If this one failed too, there wouldn't be much left of Miller Construction. Brian and I, along with our team of veterans, worked tirelessly. We reviewed plans, rebuilt models, and polished every detail. When we presented the final version to the city project office, they requested hardly any changes, just a seal of approval and a green light to begin construction. Our company secured Phase A, the initial section of the Metropolitan Transit Line project. We met all deadlines, exceeded expectations, and received excellent reviews from the city. Then came Phase B, Bruce's half. 3 months later, the city had already sent several warnings, but Bruce's team still hadn't delivered anything substantial. Half of his technical team had left. He couldn't afford to hire replacements. When he tried to poach former employees, they charged him for consultations and abandoned him as soon as the check cleared. Subcontractors only brought more headaches, and then Marie lost her patience. Rumor had it she stormed into his office unannounced, threw a handful of receipts in his face, and said in an icy voice, "I want every dollar you spent on that girl back, or I'll tell your whole family what you've been up to." Bruce was cornered. And wasn't just an affair, she was the daughter of his distant cousin. Not close enough to be direct family, but close enough that a scandal could not only ruin Bruce's name but drag the entire family line through the mud. And that cousin, known for her venom, would make Bruce pay. If not in money, then in blood. Now he had to juggle a failed project, a crumbling relationship, legal battles, reputational damage, and financial collapse in less than 90 days. He was falling apart. But above all, the biggest threat was still the project. If he couldn't deliver Phase B, it wasn't just about a contract penalty. His company's reputation would collapse. And in this city, reputation is everything.
No one here is a sinking ship.
And when a giant falls, the vacuum it leaves becomes a feeding frenzy. In the business world, there are no permanent winners, no eternal allies. I watched everything unfold and felt no need to twist the knife deeper. Instead, I remembered Marie's words.
Som times ven von person burns, the whole forest burns down.
If Bruce fell, we would certainly emerge victorious. But in the long term, taking out a known, struggling rival could open the door for someone younger, more ambitious, and much more ruthless. So, I brought the idea to Brian. His reaction was immediate. "You're saying we should help Bruce? Mom, have you forgotten what he did to you? The unpaid overtime, the missed salaries, how he made you a scapegoat. He hit you. You want to help this man? This is our chance. If he fails on this project, we can take over and control the entire Metropolitan Transit Line. Get him." His voice grew louder, faster, as if he already saw the victory flag unfurled. I let him finish, then said softly, "You're still too young. This industry is too big for one person to swallow. You've come this far thanks to the support of the team, your uncles, your mentor. And don't forget, most of them were Bruce's people. We won't be at the forefront forever. Sooner or later, someone will replace us. Wave after wave." I pressed on. "If you crush Bruce now, the next Bruce will emerge. Maybe younger, faster, stronger. You can bet what kind of opponent that will be."
Brian fell silent, frowning.
I continued, "It's better to keep a weak, known rival alive, who stays in the race and struggles to stay afloat, while we quietly strengthen ourselves. We take our time, expand slowly and strategically, until one day we take over the entire market without anyone noticing. Blowing everything up now would only cause chaos, and in chaos anyone can rise." Finally he looked up, his gaze firmer. "So you're saying we use Bruce as a decoy, so he protects us while we grow in the background?" I smiled. "Exactly, you got it. That's called using your enemy," I continued. "Winning a single battle is easy, but staying on top, that requires strategy." Brian stood up, walked to the window, and stared out for a few seconds. When he turned around, his voice had lost its intensity but had become sharper. "Okay, I get it. We're not helping him out of kindness. We're helping him because we know how the game is played." "Exactly," I said with an approving nod. "We'll continue to earn our bonuses, gain everyone's trust, and most importantly, build a reputation as a company people want to work with. United, professional, reliable. Tell me, who wouldn't want to work with a team like that?" That night, Brian called an emergency meeting with some of our senior engineers. We spent 2 hours at the table, analyzing feasibility, defining risks, and distributing responsibilities. Every detail was scrutinized, every possibility debated. In the end, the decision was unanimous. We would step in and help Bruce complete Phase B. The next morning, I called him myself. When he answered, he let out a long, defeated sigh. Gloria, are you here to rub it in? Seriously, are you ready to help us? He asked. Yes, we are, I said calmly, but don't mistake this for charity. Sure, name your terms, he said. I could hear him breathing frantically through the phone, and the corners of my mouth lifted. It wasn't just about saving him, it was about taking the helm. Once the new terms were set, we shifted into high gear and entered the final stretch. Theoretically, we were only helping with Phase B, but in reality, we quietly took the lead. When the city finally learned that our company had teamed up with Bruce's to complete the entire Metropolitan Transit Line project, their reaction was surprised approval. They had expected cooperative bloodshed, an all-or-nothing outcome. Instead, they got seamless collaboration and flawless delivery. And as for them, respectability was everything. Marie left a folder on Bruce's desk. The ledger was detailed and brutal. Every dollar he had spent on and every frivolous expense tracked and printed. She presented him with two options. Either transfer half of the company shares to her or repay every cent he had spent on his mistress and purge the company of relatives and friends. Bruce trembled with rage, but he had no leverage. He knew that if Marie made this public, the already damaged image of the company would completely collapse. In the end, he gave in, quietly transferring 50% of the company to her. He even drafted a new will. The business would go to her son. When we withdrew the arbitration claim, Bruce barely managed to plug the holes that had opened up. Perhaps for the first time in months, he could breathe again. He even invited us to a formal dinner to celebrate and show his gratitude. But I didn't go. I hadn't forgotten what he had done, the long nights he forced on me, the unpaid salaries, the public humiliation, the day he threw a folder in my face. I helped him because it helped me and my son, not because I forgave him. If it hadn't been the smartest decision, I would have gladly watched his company collapse right there. A few weeks after the project's completion, the city launched another tender, larger than the previous one, with even more funding and visibility. This time, we were the prime contractor, Bruce's company a secondary partner. We got the meat, he got the bones. Resources, control, profits, reputation, everything had changed. And so, Brian's company became the new benchmark in the industry, and Bruce, he was still there, clinging to old favors, trying to stay relevant. That night, he suddenly called me and asked if I wanted to go out to dinner with him. He said he just wanted to catch up like old friends. I thought it would be a business conversation, maybe something about the project. But the place he chose surprised me. A small corner grill, over a decade old, a bit rundown, always noisy, but full of warmth. One of those places that evoke nostalgia. What I didn't expect was that he brought Marie. Does this place look familiar? Bruce said, pouring me a glass of craft beer, smiling as if we were 20 years younger. The year we couldn't make payroll. Remember?
Wie Ate hier.
I nodded, accepting the drink. Sure, I remember. That night you bought Marie and me the house special meat sandwich. You swore we'd be rich someday. Bruce laughed, his eyes narrowing. We didn't know much back then. We just wanted to get the next job done. No one was on their guard. I took a sip of beer, as steadfast as ever. You can thank your charming secretary for changing that. If she hadn't spent her days stirring up her relatives, trying to push me out, I might never have left. He sat up indignantly. You're right. Absolutely right, Gloria. I'm sorry, but that's my fault. He downed his glass in one gulp, holding it upside down like a child trying to prove it was truly empty. Sometimes he could be a complete fool. I raised my glass with an ironic smile, to friendship. Marie, sitting next to me, watched us silently clinking glasses. Her face was inscrutable, somewhere between thoughtful and reserved. Then, just as the situation became strangely civilized, Bruce suddenly stood up and exclaimed, I forgot to feed the dog. He turned to Marie, eyes wide with feigned urgency. Sweetheart, you stay and chat with Gloria. I have to go take care of the puppy. I blinked. Since when do you have a dog? But he was already waving me off, making a hasty excuse, and disappeared without looking back. I was still trying to figure out what trick he was pulling when Marie moved her chair a little closer. She held her wine glass with grace. Her posture was calm and composed. But there was a sharpness in her gaze that I didn't miss. She took a sip, carefully placed the glass down. Brian is doing well. He's a smart young man. I looked at her but didn't reply. Your company is growing fast, she added, watching me intently. I remained silent. She paused, then continued, he has your determination and the drive of a younger generation. Finally, I replied in a neutral voice, so this dinner was to congratulate my son? She shook her head. I'm not here to talk business. Her eyes met mine. You see it as clearly as I do. Bruce is exhausted. He's pretending this is a partnership, but he's struggling to regain control. The truth is, he can't even lead his own son. Then she said bluntly, I won't let him ruin the company, and I won't let my son be ruined by it. I raised an eyebrow. So you want me to be lenient with him? No, she said in a quiet voice. I want you to consider a joint division, one led by both our sons. Brian at the helm, my son working alongside him. I'll make sure Bruce stays out of it. I didn't answer immediately. I picked up my water glass and drank slowly. She gave me a few seconds, then continued, I know this may seem like a burden to you, but in the long term, it's also a challenge for Brian. He has to learn to manage a partner he didn't choose himself, to balance resources, to deal with real conflicts. I set the glass down, my voice quiet but direct. That sounds more like you're looking for a refuge for your own son. She didn't flinch. In part, yes, but I'm not asking you to give him your company. I'm just trying to prevent him from being completely shut out of the market. I looked at her. And your company? We're not selling, she replied quickly, but we're restructuring. The development will depend on what you build together. I nodded slightly. You played well. You sacrificed Bruce's pride to save your son's future. She remained calm. I'm just doing what a mother should do. There was a pause before I responded. My voice softened but remained firm. I'll consider it. But understand one thing. Brian is someone I raised from the ground up. I won't let anyone treat his trust like an experiment. Marie nodded. Understood. Everything will be transparent, open, fair. He will know the plan from the beginning, and we will cooperate fully. By now, the lights outside had faded to a soft yellow. The sounds of the street hummed faintly through the open windows of the restaurant. I didn't say yes, but I didn't say no either. That night, as I walked home, my thoughts incessantly revolved around Marie's words. I wondered if it was strategy or survival. The next morning, I had just poured myself a fresh cup of coffee when Brian came into the office. He noticed my absent gaze and narrowed his eyes. Okay, what are you thinking about now? I smiled calmly. Marie spoke with me last night. He was immediately alarmed. What does she want this time? I didn't mince words. A small team. You lead. Her son works under your supervision. She says she'll stay out of it, just oversee everything. Brian immediately frowned. She's joking. What can she do? I'm already at my limit managing my own team. Do you expect me to coddle her son's feelings too? I laughed softly and didn't answer immediately. He pressed, Mom, you didn't agree, did you? I looked him in the eyes. No, I didn't, but I want you to hear her out. He looked genuinely confused. Hear out what exactly? Our company is just finding its footing. Why should we give chances to someone who hasn't earned them? Her son has no track record, no contacts. What does he bring to the table? Competition, I said gently. Have you ever thought it's not about the project? It's about giving her son a future that doesn't collapse. That's her problem, he said sharply. I nodded. True. But you also need to think bigger. How long do you plan to win by eliminating others? Brian was still confused. What are you getting at? So I explained. She came to us because she knows Bruce is finished, and because she knows you have what it takes. But don't get too comfortable. There are others out there, younger than you, hungrier than you, ready to work twice as hard. Right now, we're winning because we're solid, not because we're irreplaceable. I took a sip of coffee.
Now, Quita.
If you bring her son onto the team, but continue to run the program, then you get real practice managing a team, building structure, and holding people accountable. Not every alliance is a burden. Some are trials, others are the way to learn leadership. He put down the cup and finally asked, "So, you want me to take him as a test, to see if I can lead a group instead of running a project alone?" I nodded. That's where true leadership begins. It's not about doing the work. It's about shaping the people who can. He fell silent again, then sighed. "Okay, we'll try it. But I swear to you, if he slacks off, I won't coddle him." I smiled. That's exactly the attitude you need. That night, Brian called a quick meeting with the technical leads. He laid out the plan for the joint team clearly, directly, and without mincing words. His rule was simple: we lead, they support. Anyone willing to work gets a real chance to stay. The moment I saw him speak with calm authority, setting the tone not just for a job, but for a culture, I knew he was becoming more. He wasn't just managing a project, he was learning to build a legacy. The first few days after the joint project team started, the office buzzed with activity. Brian had planned everything in advance: who did what, when things needed to be done, who was responsible for the site, who handled communication. Everything was scheduled with precise timing. Bruce's company sent their team on time, 3 people, all seemingly professional and polite. But the one who undoubtedly stood out was his son, Billy. That morning, he arrived in a flashy suit, pulling a huge rolling suitcase behind him. Before he even greeted anyone, he stopped in the hallway, took a selfie, and posted it on social media with the caption, "New Beginnings." Some of our older employees, watching from their desks, rolled their eyes so hard you could almost hear it. In the first team meeting, Brian was precise. He wasted no words. His pace was fast, his instructions clear. When it came to Billy, he looked him directly in the eyes. "You'll start by coordinating with the materials team and the site personnel. Learn the process. I want a complete inventory by the end of the month." Billy didn't hide his annoyance. "I thought I was here for more than grunt work." Brian didn't even look up, continuing to flip through his documents and carry on with the meeting. Later, Billy was in the coffee room, stirring his coffee and grumbling loud enough. "So, I'm the office grunt now." One of his colleagues gave him a gentle nudge.
Kvit, tings move fast hier.
"If you mess up, not even your mother can cover for you." Billy didn't respond, but that afternoon, when he submitted his first materials list, it wasn't even half a page long. Brian looked it over, handed it back without raising his voice. "Take it and do it right. This work isn't as easy as it looks." Billy snatched the paper, stormed out with a clenched jaw and dark face. Coincidentally, I was upstairs near the window and saw everything. He left the meeting room with a blazing look and tightly pressed lips. Meanwhile, Brian remained calm, reviewing files as if nothing had happened. After only 1 week, Billy was already at rock bottom. He had a litany of complaints. He had to do everything, learn everything. Nobody cared about his opinions. In meetings, he was always assigned the heaviest tasks: site visits, rewriting reports, logistics runs. To him, it all felt like one long scam. That Friday, just before closing, he called Marie and asked for a meeting. They sat in a cafe for almost 2 hours. "Mom, he doesn't respect me," Billy said, trying to keep his voice down, but he was furious. "He treats me like an intern, sends me on field assignments, piles me with boring tasks, and then humiliates me in front of the whole team." Marie said nothing. Billy pressed. "Didn't you say this was a growth opportunity, that I could show what I can do? He's just waiting for me to fail so he can kick me out." He leaned forward and raised his voice. "Mom, aren't you going to do anything? Say something." Marie let out a long sigh. "Billy, you are my son. I will always stand by you. But right now, you are working at someone else's company. If you don't follow their rules, you won't survive." Billy froze. Evidently, he hadn't expected her to say that. His face darkened. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying," she said calmly, "perhaps it's time for you to learn to adapt, instead of expecting everyone else to bow before you. Her tone wasn't harsh, but firm, honest. Billy stared at her for a moment, then scoffed, stood up, and left, leaving his coffee untouched on the table. Marie couldn't shake her concern. She knew her son's temperament: impatient, proud, sensitive. If he openly challenged Brian, it could mean the end of their collaboration before it even began. So, the next morning, she appeared in person at the office, saying she was just there to check on the progress of the project team. She stood silently at the door of the joint project office. Inside, Brian calmly and concentratedly led the team. Billy stood in a corner, arms crossed, silent and stiff. Marie stepped forward, obviously ready to say something, when I intercepted her. "Come with me," I said. "If you have something to say, let's say it privately." As soon as we were in my office, and she had barely sat down, I went straight to the point. "Are you here to defend your son?" She froze for a split second, surprised. "It's not about defending him," she said cautiously. "I'm just worried he won't keep up. And if he delays the schedule." I didn't let her finish. "If he can't keep up, the last thing you should do is intervene." Her mouth opened, then closed again. She had no answer. I continued calmly but firmly. "My son is leading this project. If you bypass him to come to me, two things happen. First, you undermine his authority. Second, you damage your own son's credibility. If you want Billy to have a real future, let him run into some walls. Let him fall. If not, he will one day get a title he's not ready for, and the entire structure will collapse beneath him." Marie lowered her gaze, saying nothing. A few seconds passed before she finally whispered, "He's been in a bad mood lately. I'm worried about him." I softened my tone. "I understand. You're his mother. It's natural for him to be important to you, but this isn't a favor. It's business. You can love him, but you can't protect him from growing." She looked up, and for the first time, I saw a hint of agreement in her eyes. "I won't intervene again," she said softly. "The project should continue as planned. If he makes it, he's earned it. If not, it's a lesson he needed." I nodded. That was all I needed to hear. For now, the matter was settled. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Billy wasn't the type to stay in the background. If he felt constrained, he created his own spotlight. And such people are most dangerous when they want to prove something, because that's when they often make the worst decisions. In the final phase of the project, problems arose, as I had feared. It was Billy. In an attempt to prove his worth, he deviated from the script and changed the contract with the supplier without approval during a critical phase. The result: delays, material shortages, and a mess that almost brought the entire construction to a standstill. Brian noticed it and didn't waste a second. He gathered his team and worked 3 nights straight, without a break, to undo the damage. He didn't sleep, didn't complain, but simply kept going, personally directing every inch of the construction site until everything was back to normal. When the last brick was laid and the inspection came back clean, I stood at the edge of the construction site and watched him. Sweaty, his shirt clinging to his back, his eyes sharp with exhaustion. I couldn't describe the feeling.
Pride, perhaps. Relief, so meeting deeper.
The project was completed, delivered against all odds, and the result exceeded expectations. The city representatives were thrilled. There, at the construction site, Brian signed the next contract, bigger, bolder, more complex. Billy, on the other hand, was quietly removed from the team. Marie didn't object. She brought him to my office herself, calm and composed. "My son," she said, "is not made for this path." She looked me in the eyes. Her voice barely a whisper. "Your son has won." I shook my head. It wasn't about winning or losing. He was simply ready. Marie nodded slowly. "I will find him another path. He will no longer stand in your way." As she left, she showed no resentment, simply saying a plain thank you. I watched her go and felt something change within me. Some battles don't have to be fought to know who will be left standing. That was the moment I made my decision. I retired. I stepped back from projects, budgets, personnel decisions, and stopped guiding Brian. He sat with me in the office in silence for a long time. Finally, he asked, "Mom, are you really not going to help me anymore?" I smiled. "Darling, you've grown faster than I ever could have stayed. I could stay a few more years, sure, but it's not necessary." He looked down and let out a soft laugh. Half relief, half hesitation. That night, for the first time, he invited me to a celebration organized by the younger team. I stood almost at the back of the hall and watched him step onto the stage. He introduced the team, thanked the clients, told a few jokes. He seemed confident, clear, warm. He knew exactly what he was doing. Someone next to me leaned over and said, "Your son is impressive." I smiled. Yes, he really is. When the event ended, Brian came over to me and gently clinked his glass against mine. "Mom," he said, "do you feel at peace now?" I nodded. "Yes, you've become someone to count on." He paused, then looked at me, his voice soft. "And?" I thought for a moment.
By flowers my be adopt aquest, do what I like. The rest is yours.
He raised his glass a little more seriously. "Thank you, Mom, for getting me here." I didn't answer with words, just clinked my glass against his one last time and walked toward the door. The night air was fresh and still against my skin. I knew in that moment that the hardest battle of my life had nothing to do with Bruce or the people who tried to block my way. It was with myself, and finally, I could breathe.